Hi, good morning everyone. Before we begin today, I want to invite you to think of one thing. I want to invite you to think of one thing that you've tried to do for yourself in the past 6 to 12 months that's eluded you and you haven't quite succeeded to make that change for yourself. Keep that in mind as we go along, because this would give you a good frame of reference for what we're about to talk, and I'll tell you a little bit more in a moment. Now, when GibTalks announced that they're looking for speakers, I jumped in it 2 feet, because I'm a change catalyst. And for the past 17 plus years, I've been deeply intrigued by what moves us to change for the positive, and then taking that information and using it with the people that I work with to inspire them to create those changes in their own life and to keep them for the long term. So I've got notes for that. And in my experience, the 2 overriding main reasons why we fail to change when we fail. And it's not what you might think. Basically, it's not lack of information. Definitely with the internet we have that. It's not lack of motivation, and it's not lack of willpower, as you might think. What tends to happen, and this might be familiar to some of you, is that we hear some exciting bit of information on the TV, or maybe at a talk like this, hopefully. We rush off home, so definitely not lack of motivation. We rush off home, we buy the latest book on a diet that we're supposed to follow, or we buy the superfood that's going to solve all of our problems, and then we start implementing. And then for the next maybe 2 to 3 months, everything runs really well. We get good results, we get inspired, because we're all wired to want to do good for ourselves, so we naturally follow that. And then before too soon, we stumble, we fall, because that's the natural process of change. We dust ourselves off because we are taught that strong individuals dust themselves off and carry on going. And then we stumble and we fall again, and then we stumble and we fall again. And before we know it, there's a little voice in the back of our head that starts whispering at us, oh, maybe we're just not strong enough. Maybe our willpower is not going to carry us through this one. And maybe we should just give up. And then eventually we start listening to that voice, because we're also wired to want to go back to safety, to what we used to have before, as opposed to this new change. And pretty soon we actually just give up. And what's a crying shame is that some of us resolve to never try again. And in my experience, the 2 overriding reasons why we fail to create the changes that we want in our lives is, number 1, because we try to change everything at the same time. And at the same time, we must look after our kids, we must look after the family, cook dinner, go and make money, etc. And naturally that becomes overwhelming, so we give up. And then the second overriding reason why we might fail is because we try to change our lifestyle on somebody else's terms. So we play to someone else's tune. We expect that somebody outside of us is going to know better than us, and we live in our bodies 24/7. So we forget to take charge of that. We keep charge of our businesses, but we forget to take charge of our own bodies and listening to them and paying attention to what will change us for the better. So today I'm here to give you a way to change any failed attempts in the past. I'm going to share with you a simple method called tiny little actions, which will allow you to become the boss of your own change process, or as I like to call it, the CEO of the business of you. Sounds a lot more sexy like that. Okay, the tiny little actions method is based on tried and tested frameworks you might have heard in all walks of life. Like, for example, in business, we call it Kaizen, so it's small incremental changes amounting to massive overriding long-term results. And then in the realm of storytelling, we've heard of the parable of the tortoise and the hare. The slow and steady wins the race. Someone you might not have heard of before is Professor B.J. Fogg of Stanford University, who has dedicated his life in simplifying the process of change to make it easier for us so we can do it quickly and reliably, time and time again. But before I tell you about the tiny little actions method, I'd like you to do a little experiment with me, please, while we're sitting down, because we don't have time to get up. With your left hand, I'd like you to point at me the way you... Come on. I can see that much from the light. Point at me with your left index finger, the way your mom taught you it was rude to do so. And then with the right hand, give me a thumbs up so I'm okay about that finger. Okay, cool? And now, as quickly as possible, I'd like you to switch between the 2 of them. Try it. Just try it. Good. Okay, so if you anything like a normal human being and you've never tried this before, this would have felt really awkward, right? And one of three overriding thoughts would have creeped up in your mind. One of them might have been, this is stupid and it's too hard, and you would have given up. Number two might have been, wow, this is hard, but I know that if I keep practicing, I'm going to get better at it, just like I did when I learned to ride a bike or to drive a car, etc. And then the third thought might have been, wow, this is really cool. If I get good at this, can you imagine the party trick I'm going to have for Friday night, right? And neither one of the three is right or wrong. What they are is showing you how you typically deal with change when you meet change. And I wanted to give you this little physical example as an anchoring point, so the next time you're faced with change and you feel that pushback, you have something physical to recall. Remember that your brain is wired to learn new things, and as long as you put in the practice and you make the practice challenging enough to keep you interested, so keep practicing, or and you don't make the challenge too challenging so it's overwhelming, your brain will get better at it if you show up and you put in the practice. So also I would like to keep this little physical exercise as we go along, and I share the process with you, because some of the concepts I'm going to share with you will give you that resistance and you will want to reject them because it's something new. But please trust the process. It's been tried and tested on many, many people before, and they have been successful. So I'm going to invite you to come along. The reason why you have the sheets that you have with you is because I have to rattle through the process really quickly, because we're only given 10 minutes and I'm still going to overrun probably by one. Don't worry if you don't get some of the details. Everything you need is on that sheet. Just dedicate on writing that one action that you thought of in the beginning of the conversation. Write it down somewhere before you leave today and commit on going through the sheet. It will take you 5 to 10 minutes maybe in your spare time. Commit some time this weekend to go through that with the sheet in your own time. Right. The tiny little actions process has 5 steps. The power of it lies in the fact that it's a process, so you learn it once and then you apply it as many times as you want. So you don't have to keep on relearning new things. And because it's a process, it becomes a tool in your toolbox. And the tool you can use repeatedly to basically create as many changes as you want. It has 5 steps, as I already said. And basically the first step we've already taken care of, which is the action that you want to implement, the change that you want to make happen in your life. The sheet will actually have a way for you to make it tiny and specific. Step number 2 is to think of a trigger, and the trigger basically serves you as a reminder, because the action you're going to do is something new for you. The trigger will remind you to perform that action so that you can put in the practice and get better. And the trigger is typically something that you already do as a habit in your life, like brushing your teeth. Again, in the sheet you will find more details as to how to choose the right trigger for your action that you've decided to create. Step 3 is a step that typically the type A individuals that I work with would poo-poo as a little bit of a childish and silly step, but psychologically it's one of the most important steps. And step 3 is the reward and celebration, because our brains are also wired to want to do things that make us feel good or give us some sort of reward. Right, so this is basically an artificial way to trick your brain, give it something meaningful and significant, so that it wants to come back and do that practice that you need to do to actually make this new activity the norm. Right. Step 4 is a very almost technical step that I felt that was needed to be put in here, because our lifestyles are so busy nowadays. We need a little bit of a fail-safe so that we don't forget to do our action every day. So schedule it. I usually use my watch, but you could schedule it on your phone. If you use a diary, whatever you use already, use that to schedule a reminder for yourself. And then the final step is to do, which is the practice we spoke about. So to do your action, and then to also to track it. And this typically gets the most eye rolls from people that I work with, because they go like, well, really, Anita, do I need another thing to do? I mean, it's already enough. But I'd like you to think of the tracking as a really powerful motivation tool, and also as a very reliable and loyal accountability buddy for you. So basically what you'll do is you could just take something as plain sheet of paper, stick it next to your desk. You just have a line for each day of the month, and you just come and you tick it off. But if you can imagine that if you had a 10-day streak of showing up and doing your action, it's much less likely for you to now to not show up for the 11th day, for example, and that's how it keeps you motivated. And that's it, really. That's the tiny little actions recipe baked into a nice little habit loop, which incidentally is the official name of what we've just created together. I'm running out of time, so all I want to do is remind you, please do not let this be a waste of your time. Please write down that action on your sheet of paper, commit 5 to 10 minutes this weekend, go over the process, and then spend maybe the next 7 days trying it out. You have my email address on the thing. Email me if you get stuck. There's no strings attached. I just want to help you, because you don't have to wait for your entire life slate to be clean before you can create something good for yourself and to start being healthier, or whatever it is that you've promised yourself for the last 6 to 12 months with that action. You can start by one tiny incremental change at a time, and you can start it tomorrow. And soon you're going to see all the results you're getting, and you're going to want to do more, because that's how you're wired.